Imagine somebody asks you how long will it take to hook up this TV set. You think, well, I don't know, 10 minutes, half an hour? You've done this before. You've got all the cables, the connections. It should be fine. It shouldn't take long. But then you go to your attic or wherever you keep your cables and voila. The HDMI cable you thought you had is actually a micro HDMI. It doesn't fit. So you go to the store, you pick up a new one, you come back, you finally connect the power, and the circuit breaker trips. Turns out that the outlet was already overloaded. Now you're rearranging half of the electrical setup. What you thought would take 10 minutes ends up the whole day. That's what estimating software is like. Let's take a simple example. A dev gets asked to implement a feature that requires a third-party integration. They think, no problem, I did this 2 months ago, I know how the API works, shouldn't take more than an hour. Test it, push it to production, done. Then they sit down and think, okay, I'll just log into the API dashboard. Wait, what's the password again? Now you're checking through Notion, asking somebody else on Slack, realizing that you should have stored in a password manager, but didn't. And when you finally get it, the layouts change, the docs are broken, the test the sandbox button doesn't work, but sure, just a quick implementation. And on top of that, the API key is expired. Why? Security policy. So the key expires after 30 days. Now you need to get a new one, but you don't have the permission to generate it. So you ping someone in the organization, the person might be out, they might no longer be with the company, or just be slammed with back-to-back meetings. So you wait. Eventually, you get the key. But now the API has migrated to version 2. The responses are different. You test in Postman, you need to import new types, you need to refactor things and rethink how it plugs into your system. That simple integration just turned into a full rebuild. And well, that's the problem. A 30-60 minute task quietly turns into 2-3 days of work. Developer estimates are almost always wrong. Not because devs are lazy, but because software is unpredictable. Okay, maybe we're not the best at planning, but that's because we are trying to predict unknowns. Software isn't exactly like construction. You're not laying bricks. You're building invisible systems that talk to other invisible systems with logic you can't always see and constraints you don't always control. Even the people building it don't fully know what they are walking into. In fact, most estimates are made before anyone's looked in the metaphorical attic, and still we treat them like promises. So, in this video, we're going to break down why estimates fail, why it creates friction with product and business, and what we can do instead. Let's talk about how this usually starts. A feature gets scoped, something that sounds simple. Just add a button. Now, experienced developers don't assume that's simple. We have been burned before more than once. But even with experience, we can't always see the full scope until we're already in it. The button might need to do several things, like trigger an API call, show a loading spinner, update UI state, handle edge cases. It may behave differently depending on user status. It might touch permissions, analytics, responsiveness, maybe even the CMS. Let me give you a real, well, somewhat real example. In one of the applications I'm building and maintaining, we needed to add, well, you guessed it, a button. But this button was only meant to show for a specific type of user, somebody that has logged in and who has completed a certain step or purchased a certain feature. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? But here is what actually happens. First, there is an authentication and authorization check. Then we need to check if the user meets the business condition. Maybe they have completed onboarding or bought a certain package. That requires either an API call or a direct database query. And since the button is interactive, that component itself has to be a client-side component. Or maybe it's split. Part of the logic is handled server-side and only the button itself is interactive. Only it is on the client. But now we have to ask, okay, when is this check made? During login? On page load? Is it made on every render? If the user just made a purchase, will the button update immediately? Does your app revalidate the state in real time? Or does it rely on something like polling or cron jobs? There is a huge difference in user experience. And we haven't even touched on analytics yet. There might have been a different button in that place before. So now you're tracking two different user behaviors. One for discovering a feature they already own, and another for discovering one they haven't yet purchased or unlocked. All of this affects attribution, funnels, and user journeys. And none of this is obvious from the task description. Figma doesn't show you that the backend is missing an endpoint. It doesn't show you that the change affects mobile navigation, or that the legal team needs to approve something in the copy. And it definitely doesn't show you the bug that only appears on Safari when the screen is under 375 pixels wide. So the problem isn't that developers are naive. The problem is that we are estimating from a partial view, and we uncover the rest only after we've started. More experience helps, sure, but the more edge cases you've seen, the better you get at guessing what's hidden underneath. But you cannot foresee everything, and that's why even the best developers can get caught off guard. So, here's the next thing we sometimes forget. Software is a system. You're never just adding a feature. You're adding it to something that's already alive, already connected, and already working, hopefully. It's not like adding a brick to a wall. It's like rewiring one room in a smart home. You tweak the thermostat and suddenly the light starts dimming when they shouldn't. In software, every feature lives inside a bigger web. Authentication, validation, localization, accessibility, analytics, loading logic, routing, state, layout, responsiveness, deployment, edge cases, and so on. The feature itself might be 50 lines of code, but making sure it plays nice with everything else, well, that's where the work is. I've had bugs where changing the wording on a button triggered layout issues on a different page, because the text length pushed something out of the bounds or whatnot, or where a settings toggle broke a completely unrelated screen because they shared some obscure slice of state. This is why small tasks are often underestimated. It's not that the task is hard, it's that it sits inside a system where the knock-on effects are hard to predict. You can write a sentence in 5 seconds, but writing a sentence that fits inside a legal contract doesn't change its meaning and doesn't expose you to liability. That takes work. That's what shipping features is like. You're not just building something that works. You're building something that works with everything else. And then there's the optimism. It's not that developers are lying, it's that we genuinely want to believe we can ship fast. We've done similar work before, we know the tools, we've got the experience, so a voice in my head goes, "This is going to be an easy win. I've built this before twice, and this time I'm gonna do it right. I am a good developer. I can do this and I can do it easily." And you're thinking, "I'll even refactor it while I'm at it. Clean code, baby, this time is going to be beautiful." But by day 2, you're 30 tabs deep, debugging something that shouldn't even exist, wondering why you ever even spoke out loud. That's the internal pressure, the urge to prove you're good at your job, not just to others, but to yourself. And that kind of pressure builds up. In fact, according to a 2021 study by Haystack Analytics, up to 83% of developers report experiencing work-type burnout. Now, that's not the subject of this video, but it is connected. Because after that initial optimism, you get the classic internal monologue in the developer's head. Day 1, scaffold the page. Day 2, connect the API. Day 3, polish the UI. Day 4, profit. It's like playing fantasy football league, but with real-life deadlines. So you convince yourself, if nothing goes wrong, I've got this. But in software, something always goes wrong. And we know that. So we start padding the estimate. What started as 5 days becomes 5. So that's a week. And you add in some meetings, code reviews, other projects. Now it's 2 weeks at least. So just to be safe, maybe let's say 2 to 4 weeks. But here's the trap. Product only hears the 2. That's what ends up on the slide deck. And the 4, well, that's going to be treated as a failure, even though it was part of the original estimate. And this is where optimism turns into liability. We're not trying to sandbag. We just don't want to sound, well, incompetent. This is the external pressure. Because when you say this might take 6 weeks, well, it sounds like you're slow, or worse, like you don't know what you are doing. But what happens instead? Well, optimism often gets rewarded. You are seen as confident, capable, and, well, fast. And that becomes the cultural baseline, even when it blows up later. So we end up underestimating by default because no one wants to be the developer who says, well, actually, this is gonna take a month. And here's the irony. The same optimism that made you look capable at the start is what makes you look incompetent after, when the reality catches up. It's not deception, it's not laziness, it's just how human brains work, especially when you mix confidence, pressure, and a fast-moving roadmap. So yeah, developer optimism is real, and it quickly sets us up for the exact kind of friction we are trying to avoid. So let's talk about what actually happens once the estimate is given and the build begins. This is the part nobody accounts for, where reality kicks in. Suddenly, something small breaks. One assumption turns out to be wrong. The endpoint you thought existed doesn't. The design you got, incomplete. The logic you so meticulously scoped out conflicts with another part of the system. You go to connect to the third-party service and find out they updated the API to version 3. You try to deploy, and the CI/CD pipeline fails because of a new build error from a package you didn't even touch. Or you're stuck waiting for someone to approve the copy, waiting for a designer to fix spacing, waiting for access to a staging environment, or waiting for legal team to approve something that to you appears tiny. All of this is happening while the clock is ticking. And to everyone else, it just looks like nothing is moving. You said this was a 2-week task. It's day 10. What is going on? What's going on is that you're firefighting invisible problems nobody planned for. That 2 to 4 weeks buffer, yeah, that's gone. That ship has sailed. And none of it looks like progress on the outside. There's no flashy comet to show. There is no shiny new screen, just 6 Slack messages, 3 blocked threads, and a bunch of open tabs on Postman. From the outside, it looks like delay, but from the inside, it's exactly what happens, well, almost every time. Because estimates don't break when there's something wrong about the code. They break when you're wrong about the conditions around the code. Like when you hear a AAA game being delayed for the 3rd time in a row again, and everybody is super mad at the developers. But in reality, it's not the developers being lazy. It's approvals, it's late stage bugs, it's edge cases, it's a million other things that can go wrong, you name it. So after all this, what do we actually do instead? Because saying just stop estimating will not help anyone. Estimates are necessary, but they need to be treated as what they really are. Guesses, not guarantees. So here is what helps. First, give a range, not a single number, and explain the assumptions behind it. If we get access on day 1 and nothing changes, it's gonna take 1 week. But if there are blockers or handoffs, it could stretch to 3. This is not hedging, that's being honest. Second, track the work as it unfolds. Don't anchor yourself to a number from 2 weeks ago. Look at how much progress is actually being made. What new blockers showed up. Adjust based on reality, not on a number someone threw out on day 1. Third, share the why. Don't just say, it's delayed. Say, we discovered the API changed. We needed a legal review. The assumption behind our estimate turned out to be wrong. The context changes everything, because people don't get frustrated when they hear what happened. They get frustrated when they don't hear anything at all. Finally, build a culture where honest estimates are okay, where this might take longer than expected doesn't make you look crazy, where pushing back on unrealistic timelines is seen as professionalism, not negativity. Because here's the truth. The problem isn't that estimates are always wrong. It's that we pretend that they are right, and then we act shocked when they are not. So let's stop treating software like it's assembly line work, because it is not. It's creative, iterative, and it is messy. And we're honest about that from the start. We can plan better, we can ship better, and trust each other a whole lot more.